Everything you thought you knew about Meghan's royal future may have been built on the wrong number. Because while millions keep repeating the mysterious long-discussed countdown, a completely different timeline has been setting an official public record almost unnoticed. And once those dates are placed side by side, the unfolding picture becomes far more explosive than anyone expected. For days. Just 4. That is the number suddenly making palace-devoted watchers ask whether the monarchy has already shown exactly how quickly it can move when it truly wants something done. And if that precedent exists, then whispers surrounding Prince William's reported long-term vision suddenly feel far less like distant speculation and much more like a blueprint quietly waiting for the right moment. The biggest question isn't whether change is possible. The biggest question is who already knows the mechanism and who still hopes the public never notices it. For months, headlines have thrown around dramatic countdowns, imaginary deadlines, and theories that seemed incredibly convincing simply because they were repeated often enough. But buried beneath the noise sits something much more dangerous. Official paperwork, documented government records, palace announcements, Gazette publications. They don't rely on opinions. They rely on dates. And those dates tell a story that refuses to stay quiet. The institution many people describe as painfully slow suddenly demonstrated remarkable speed during another high-profile royal situation, raising uncomfortable questions about whether the same constitutional tools could someday be directed somewhere else entirely. That's where the conversation becomes impossible to ignore. Everything truly begins with the constitutional detail that most people never bother learning. Royal titles are not always dependent upon lengthy parliamentary battles or endless political negotiations. Certain powers remain under the royal prerogative exercised through letters patent, an ancient legal instrument that has survived centuries of constitutional evolution. That single document has repeatedly shaped the structure of the monarchy itself. No public referendum, no televised debate, no nationwide consultation. Once authorized, prepared, sealed, and officially published, its lasting legal force becomes immediate. Suddenly, the idea that royal decisions must crawl through months of bureaucracy starts looking far less convincing than many determined commentators would like everyone to believe. Then came the case that changed everything. In late 2025, Buckingham Palace publicly confirmed that a formal process involving Prince Andrew had officially begun. The announcement itself attracted enormous headlines, but what many viewers never followed was what happened next. While the media moved on to fresh unfolding scandals, official legal steps continued almost silently. Just days later, letters patent were dated. Soon afterward, the Gazette published the completed legal instrument. From the palace announcement to the documented legal completion, only 4 days separated the beginning from the decisive constitutional action. 4 days, not months, not seasons. Just enough time for one long weekend. That documented constitutional sequence immediately became the most recent real-world demonstration of how rapidly the monarchy can execute specific constitutional powers when every legal requirement is already in place. That timeline has now become the center of a much larger debate. If the institution has already demonstrated this remarkable level of speed once, then every future conversation about royal titles suddenly carries an entirely different weight. Reports, commentators, and palace insiders have increasingly suggested that Prince William intends to oversee a dramatically streamlined monarchy whenever his reign eventually begins. Those discussions have repeatedly mentioned Prince Harry and Meghan as figures unlikely to regain active positions within the institution. Some commentators have even suggested that ceremonial styles and privileges could become early priorities under a future reign. Whether every prediction proves correct is almost secondary to the constitutional question itself. The mechanism clearly exists. The recent precedent exists, and that combination alone has intensified speculation unlike anything seen in recent years. Then another twist pushed the mystery even further. Public statements surrounding the children's titles appeared to evolve over time, and that change became a talking point all by itself. Earlier remarks emphasized that the decision rested entirely with the institution, suggesting there was little control outside palace procedures. Later statements described the matter as having been settled in alignment with Buckingham Palace. Those two explanations left royal observers asking whether the process had always been as straightforward as it was first presented, or whether important negotiations had taken place quietly behind closed doors. The wording changed. The timeline remained difficult to explain, and whenever official language changes, while public documentation stays incomplete, speculation naturally grows louder. Silence inside royal circles rarely ends a controversy. More often, it fuels one. But perhaps the biggest misunderstanding involves the enormous difference between titles and constitutional offices. Many dramatic headlines merge them into one sweeping prediction. Yet, the legal framework tells a much more complicated story. Certain royal styles can be altered through letters patent under the royal prerogative, a process demonstrated in the Andrew case. Other matters, however, fall into an entirely different constitutional category. Peerages, statutory positions, and changes involving legislation cannot simply disappear because a monarch signs a document. Parliament becomes part of the process, and parliamentary timetables move very differently from royal administrative decisions. Suddenly, the conversation splits into two completely separate clocks. One may move in days, the other may require far longer. That distinction changes everything, even if many headlines prefer the simpler version. As discussion surrounding Prince William's future reign continues, commentators have repeatedly suggested that he envisions a significantly smaller working monarchy. Those reports have fueled endless debate over what powers could be exercised quickly and what constitutional barriers would remain firmly in place. The documented Andrew timeline demonstrated remarkable speed for one category of action, while the unanswered questions surrounding Archie and Lilith illustrated how another issue unfolded across many months. Two situations, two different timelines, two very different constitutional realities. That contrast is exactly why so many royal analysts continue examining every official announcement, every Gazette publication, and every palace statement with extraordinary attention. They are not merely watching personalities. They are watching constitutional mechanics unfold in real time. When both timelines are placed beside one another, the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. One file moved from announcement to completed legal publication in a matter of days. Another title-related question remained publicly unresolved for months before the language surrounding it appeared to settle. Whether those situations involve different legal requirements or entirely separate constitutional mechanisms remains the subject of continuing debate, but the documentary record itself has encouraged closer examination. The numbers speak loudly on their own. One process demonstrated exceptional speed. The other appeared surrounded by uncertainty. That difference continues to generate questions every time discussion turns toward the future of the monarchy and the scope of powers available to a new sovereign. And that brings us back to the question, quietly sitting beneath every headline. If some constitutional powers can clearly move with remarkable speed, while others require legislation and much longer procedures, then every dramatic prediction about a future royal shakeup deserves far closer examination. The official documents reveal that not every royal action follows the same path, and understanding those differences may be more important than any sensational countdown circulating online. Until every unanswered question surrounding the public record is fully clarified, debate will continue. The timelines remain on the record, the legal distinctions remain on the record, and the mystery surrounding how those constitutional tools may someday be used continues to provoke intense discussion because in the end, the loudest part of this entire story may not be what has already happened, but what the official paperwork still does not completely explain. As long as those unanswered questions remain, palace watchers will keep searching for the missing pieces, convinced that somewhere between documented fact, constitutional procedure, and carefully chosen public statements lies a much larger story that has yet to fully unfold.